This is Shabbos Yud Beis. We're continuing discussion. There was a discussion that Beis Shammai were able to get some enactments done because they outnumbered Beis Hillel. Some of them were done on consensus and some done by outnumbering Beis Hillel. And we shall continue. Dr. Gemara. Elohein Shigazru. These are the ones that were geyser that were enacted. Elu Asaras Kamer, the 10 that we said before already, and this was done all on unanimity. Vashar, the rest of the list, Min Ma Tane Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, and this is what Shimon Bar Yochai says, by Biyam of that day, Gazru al Pisan Vial Visan, they decreed on bread and on cheese of those who are over there by Zara, Vial Yenan, Vial chumot, and wine, and on vinegar, vial siron, vial musira, and on brine, and on fish mura, al kvu shehen, vial shalukehen, vial miluchikehen, and on the preserves, on the cooked foods, and on their salted foods, vial chalika, vial shkika, vial tin sane, and on their chalika, shkina, and sane, which are different types of foods that are made from grain, via Loshain and on their language, via Dusan on the testimony, via B'Nesehan on their gifts, via B'Nehan on their sons, via B'Nesehan on their daughters, via Bukurein and on their Bikurim. So the rabbis of Caesarea said that part of the original list actually was those that they did on consensus, and the other list was those that they did by taking a vote. So now we're finishing up. Now the other view to replace those that we did on consensus, this is the ones that replaced that list. Now the Gemara is going to explain each one a little bit more in depth. Pisan, on their bread. So let's talk about Pas Nachri. Rabbi Yaakov Baracha b'Shei Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yaakov Baracha said to B'Shei Rabbi Yechanan, "Mehalachos imumhim." This was a halacha of obscurity. So how is it a halacha of obscurity? Obviously, they were matir something when they didn't really want to. Let's see. Rabbi Yosef says, "Kashaita kumi Rabbi Yaakov Baracha." So they asked before the Rabbi Yaakov Baracha, "Ma malachos shel imum?" What does it mean that they were halachas of obscurity? This is what he says. When you could easily find Pas Yisrael, then we're going to say you shouldn't have any Pas Goyim. The imumu aleha hatirhu, but the Rabbanan was still obscure and still wanted to matter it even in that situation. Are you going to say a makam she'ein Pas Yisrael mitzuya, in a place where you can't find Pas Yisrael, b'din haya hetehei Pas Goyim uteres? Then, of course, Pas Goyim is going to be mutter. The imumu, and it was obscured aleha v'yasura to make it usher. So Rav Noman, Rav says, v'yesh imumus. Isur, do you make an obscurity to make an isur? No, it's mainly you say machmer. You don't say that it's imum, that it's obscure. So pas lav tavshil gayimhu. So further, pas of bread is not considered cooked foods of a guy. Kachon oimrim. This is what they're saying. We cannot find cooked foods of Yisrael. So in that situation, we're going to have to say that cooked food of a Goyim is going to be permitted. And the Rabbanan were still starting to say obscure, that they were still usher, trying to make them maybe possibly usher even in that situation. Elakani, rather like this. The makam she'ein pas Yisrael mitzuya, in a place where bread of Jews is not available, v'din haya shnei pas goyim asura, then the pas goyim is going to be prohibited. The imuy alev aturim fnei chai nefesh, but they allowed it. They wanted to say even pas akum is not going to be good, but because of pikuach nefesh, because of eichel nefesh, they said fine, it's allowed. Now, of course, we could also say like this, that really when you have Pas Yisrael available, you should go to Pas Yisrael. And when you don't have Pas Yisrael available, then you could rely on Pas Akum. However, when you do have Pas Yisrael available, you could also then get Pas Akum, and that's the obscurity to make it even mutter then, because we're saying that even in that situation, mutter is mutter. So whether or not there's Pas Yisrael available, Pas Akum is still technically mutter, and we want to obscure it so people shouldn't go ahead and get it. But if it's cheaper, if it's better, for whatever reason, then you can get Pas Akum. But lechatchila, you should get Pas Yisrael and only get Pas Akum if there's no other choice. But in a situation, even when you have Pas Yisrael available, you can still get Pas Akum because technically it's still allowed. Rabbanon the Kisera and B'Shei Rab Yaakov Barach, or Rabbanon of Kisaria said in the name of Rav Acha Baraka, Kedivrei mi shehu matir. It's according to one who permits it that the Pas Akum in place where bread of a Jew is unavailable. So then that's what it's saying, that it's still permitted. Ubulvad mina apalter, but provided, of course, that it's a commercial baker. So v'loy adidon came, but people are not to practice this. So there's two ways of learning the Gemara. Either they're not to practice to only get from a commercial baker, they also get from a personal baker, because again, allowed is allowed. So whether it's a commercial baker or it's a personal baker, people rely on it and say when there's no real access to Pas Yisrael, you can get the Pas Akum. The other way of saying it is no, that really they do not follow this, and really even when the Pas Yisrael is available, they'll still go to a commercial baker and still get Pas Goyim, because the bottom line is when it's a commercial baker, so then there's less likely a chance that things are going on because he's not cooking personally for a Jew, so he's not going to purposely slip things in. He's doing for the general public, and if we know for the general public that he's basically using kosher ingredients and doing it in a kosher way, so then, and of course, his oven is only used for kosher things because it's commercial. He doesn't have time to cook non-kosher things in there. So then, whether or not Pas Yisrael is available, Pas Akum is available, people came to rely and to have it. That's two ways of learning this Gemara. Amron Kume Rab Chia Rab Ruva, in the presence of Rab Chia the Great, Tani Rab Shimon ben Chai, we learned about Shimon ben Chai, Eicha Tishbaru Mi'itam Bakesa V'chaltam, the Gam Mayim Tichru Mi'itam. He translated this pasuk that says you should purchase food from them with money, so you may eat. Also, water you should buy from them. So Ma Mayim Shaloi Nishtadu Mivroi Saisam. Just as water that has not changed from its original from its creation, Afkol Dover Shaloi Dishbato Briyosoi, anything not come from its original created part, you could take. In other words, you take a vegetable and it's still a vegetable, so it looks like a vegetable, it hasn't been changed, then you could rely on it and say it's good. So water is good and the vegetable is good, and we need to talk about examples. Hasiva, but they challenged. Hare, but we learned from Mutalia, Uparskinon, and from Uskinon, which are capers, Ukuskunkos, and Veliks, the Kolyais, and kernels, the Chamin, hot water, Shilhen from Nachrim. Hare Elu Mutaran, these are all permitted. Nicha Kulahim, it's understandable for all of them. Shehei Yechoilin Lasharan Lahachzir Kamaishu. It's because they really could all turn back to the original state. What about parched kernels? What about that? Amar Rav Yaisi Barabi Bum B'Shem Rav, same said in the name of Rav. Kol Eichel Shahu Nechel Chai Kamai Shahu. Any food that can be eaten in its raw state, back in its raw state, but you have it cooked. So Ein Bai Mishum Tavshil Goyim. There's no problem if a guy cooks. In other words, you have vegetables, carrots, celery, leeks, those type of things. Question is going to be onion. Onion is its own separate problem. The Yitzim by Mishum Erev Tafshilin. So, and one could also use them for Erev Tafshilin. Not vegetables cooked by Goyim, but cooked vegetables in general. So, even though you could eat it in its raw state, the fact that it's cooked, that's good for Erev Tafshilin as a cooked food. Ma Mikayim Rab Chia Ruba. Why does the Rab Chia the Great explain this verse? Eichel Tishbaru Meitam. You should purchase from them. Well, Eichel Tishbaru. With food you break from your adversaries. Achalta Shavrai. And you have fed your adversaries, then you have broken. Shem Haya Kasha Aleha. For if it was acting harshly toward you, Oichel Tishbaru, you should break him with food. The Imlav, and if not, Hachra Allah Kesef. Outweigh him with Kesef. Bribe him with kesef. Either way, you should make sure that you have the one step over your adversaries. Amrin, they were counted. Kain, Haya, Rabbi Yonasan, Avad. The following is Rabbi Yonasan would do. Kachaya, Chame, Barnash, Rab Alil, Le Karte. That he would see a prominent individual that was coming to the city. Have, Mishalach, Le Ikran. He would send him honorary gifts. So, my Yomar. So why does Rabbi Yonasan say this? Itan haya din disam, that if there's going to be a case involving a Jewish orphan, din the arm law, or a case involving a Jewish widow, Nishkach afin biapaisa aloi. We'll find that an appeasing face upon him, that he already appeased him, already bribed him beforehand. So when he comes before him regarding this judge, bint, and regarding this case, then he would win. Now we're going to talk about cheese and milk. Givinasan. So adulterous cheese. But for some reason, then the Gemara turns into milk, and then we'll discuss cheese right at the end. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Cholev Hagoy Lamahu Aser. Why is it that Cholev Stam, Cholev of a Goy is Aser? Mishum Ta'aruv V'Sam Behema Tamea. Because we're worried about that it's mixed with Behema Tamea. Now, is it Behema Tamea as follows? It could be Behema Tamea meaning a Chazer, which is a Behema Tamea, which is a tummy animal. The Torah says there are kosher animals. There are Behemoths Taharos, like a cow. And then there are Behemoths Tameim, like Chazir. So then, is that what's considered? Or Behemoth Tameya, meaning a behemoth that has a mum, and now can no longer eat, and now it's considered like an avela, and that also is considered a Behemoth Tameya. So it's possible that the milk came from either a cow and a pig, or did it come from a cow and it was mixed with another cow that was a Tameya, that was Nevela. But we're going to see that it's not the former. It's not about the Nevela. It's really about mixing with other animals, because unless you could tell from outward appearance that a behemoth is a Nevela, so then that obviously is no problem to mix. However, if you can tell from the outside, then it's considered a behemoth tamei, just like it will be a chazer, and this is how we see the Gemara. So let's see what the Gemara says. Betane came, and we had a brayso teach this. I made hu Yisrael be'eder. If a Jew is standing amongst the herd, if a guy choyled, maybe lie, the guy brings him milk from one of the animals, and not to worry about it, then it's prohibited. In other words, if the Jew is there, and he can see the cows basically are all fine, they're all cows, and there are no pigs there, and the milk is there, so then he gets the milk, it's fine. Either because there's definitely no pig in there, no other animal tomato, or because by at least first glance he could see none of the cows there are nevelis, none of them seem to be breathing heavy or sick or in a situation where they're nevelis. Therefore, you could know that the milk is good. So long as there's some semblance of mashkiches, so then there's no problem to have milk. Whether it's a government mashkiches, the government says cow milk has to be cow milk, or a mashgiach coming in and out, like an OUD type of situation. So Rabbi Bob b'shem Rabbi Yehuda, Bob says b'shem Yehuda, Rabbi Simon b'shem Rabbi Yeshua b'Levi, Rabbi Simon b'shem Yeshua b'Levi, Chaylev Hagai Lam Hu Aser. So why is it that a chaylev of a guy stam is going to be aser in what situation? Mishum Giloi, because of uncovered beverages. You worry that he did not watch the beverage, and we have a rule that uncovered beverages over a certain time, especially overnight, are not allowed because they could possibly be poisonous. Whether or not we hold of this these days is another story, because yes, there's a famous story of Chaim Kanievsky with the uncovered milk, but there's also these days, for the most part, not snakes, scorpions, and other things going around in people's houses that would make something tummy or something poisonous. In other words, you leave a cup of water overnight on your dresser, it does not make it that it's poison the next day. Chances are it's not going to be poison. Very big chance it's not going to be poison. There's going to be a very, very small chance that anything you leave uncovered is going to be infected that you can't look and see. If you look and see in the morning and you see there's a bug in there, there's a bug in there. But if you left something uncovered overnight and you come the next day, there was no snake that came to your house. There was no scorpion that came to your house. There was no snakes and scorpions beforehand. Is it a good thing always to cover anyway? Yes, it's a good thing over to cover anyway, because little insects could fly, and we know with Rulus Pasteur that's how the insects reproduce. They'll go there and they'll lay their eggs, and you can never know. It can be microscopic. Fine, it's a good thing. Is it also these days? Again, I'm not going to paskin. It's a separate discussion. But we're worried about if a guy left something unprotected overnight that it could be dangerous. So, the amid, but what about if it curdled? If it curdled, then the poison's not going to stay there. So now we have the discussion about the cheese. All this time we're talking about the milk. We're worried about the milk, whether it's not good. But we didn't outlaw milk. It didn't say the cholav of akum. It said gvinas akum. So now we're talking about really the gvina of akum, and that's when you let it stay and the kernel come into cheese. So it's saying that if it kernels, it can't be poisonous. So when it's milk, possibly, cheese, we're going to see whether or not it could be, because now the Gemara is going to change its mind and say that it could be poisonous. So now the situation where when it's cheese, what's the problem with it? Because then you have the same issue. It may be from a animal that's tummy. Cheese takes a process. You can't just look and see that a guy is bringing you milk. You can't just say this milk is cow's milk, because even if it is cow's milk, it could have other things in it to make it cheese that will be not kosher. And therefore, you can't trust that a guy's cheese is automatically kosher, even if it's made from cow milk. So Amar Rab Shmuel Bar Rav Yitzchak, Rab Shmuel Bar Yitzchak says, "B'tnei Eres Hanusun Bein Hanakum." The venom remains between the holes. As it curdles, it comes out of the cheese, but it remains in the holes between the cheese. And when you take a bite, the venom can still be there. Betani came, it was also taught similarly. Shloisha Asura and Haim. There are three types of venom. Shloisha Arosin Haim. There are three types of venom. Echot Saf, one that floats. Echot Shoikea, one that sinks. V'echot Shehu Shachra Oimeid Omala. It forms like a net and remains in the top. B'yoimai Rav Yirmiyah, the days of Rav Yirmiyah, is Galyan Gigaisa the Sodra Ruva. There was barrels among the great study hall that had been uncovered. Stein Kamisai Veloy Misyusum. The first people drank from it did not die. Achreya Misyusum. The later people drank from it and did die. Ani Oimer Hava. I concluded that it was a venom that sank. The top people were saved, but the venom had sunk. Payale Ha'avai Batura, workers that were once on the mountain, is Galias Kulsa Demaya, and the water became uncovered. Shaisa Kamer Veloy Misyaisum, the first one drank did not die. Acharaya Miyaisun, the later ones did die. And the Oimer Aresa Shakea Hava, it was a sinking type of venom that went into the water. So again, let's go back to our discussion. So Chol of Stam seems to be no problem. As long as there's some sort of mashkichas, whether or not there's some sort of protection from the government or from a mashkiach that comes in and out and sees that the guy is giving you regular milk, that we know that it's going to be cow milk, chalav stam is absolutely no problem. The Gemara never says better, like Pas Yisrael, better to get chalav of a Jew than to get chalav of a guy. Even in a situation where you're in the herd and you can see a guy giving you milk, the Gemara doesn't say in that situation, but if you have chalav of a Jew available, then just drink the chalav of a Jew. It basically just says carte blanche, point blank. If there's some sort of shmir on it, then chalav of a guy is fine. The problem is going to be gvina. Gvina is, even with mashkichas, is going to be a problem. You have to have full mashkichas because there could be the poison still residing in the cheese. And also the other problem is that even if it is milk and it's not from any tummy animal, so then what other ingredients were put in it? So you're going to need mashkiach from beginning to end. And if you don't have that, then you can't trust the guy's cheese. Hashem v'chometz, hatzir v'hamurias v'hadvash, oil, vinegar, fish brine, fish muria, or honey, ein bahem misham giloi, are not subject to these uncovered laws. They don't get poisoned. Rabbi Shimon said there's still no. They still also because if they might get poisoned. So Rabbi Shimon, the Rachamim will agree to Rabbi Shimon when you see a snake poking around. So if you do see a snake poking around, obviously be extra cautious. But in general, other things, the poison is not going to affect it, or the brine or whatever the substance is of the thing is not going to allow the snake to stick its venom in him, and therefore it's no problem.